I know I'm the first one in.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use your card quite a bit for the next part of the class, if you don't mind.
Okay, that's great.
All right, cool. So we're just waiting for the other people to get it.
Okay, cool.
In the meantime, I sort of going through what we're gonna be doing. In the meantime, while we're waiting, does anybody have any questions on anything that we've been doing so far? No? Sorry, let me just get to there. All right, everybody's in. Okay, looks that way. All right. Okay, guys. So we're going to look at layer styles. Does anybody know what I mean when I say layer styles? No?
No, not.
No, I'm not sure.
All right, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pull up your styles panel, and you can find it by clicking on window and clicking on styles. All right, and the styles panel looks like this. So let me just expand mine so we can all see it. Now, styles are basically like effects that you can apply to your objects or your layers, right? So remember, all objects you add to a document is represented by a layer or becomes a layer, right? And you can add effects to these layers or to these objects, right? And we call them collectively layer styles. Now, Photoshop includes a number of predefined styles. So if you pull up your styles palette, you can simply select an object. In this case, I have a text layer called layer style, right? And I can simply click on any of the predefined styles to apply that effect to that layer. All right, and it quickly just applies the effect. Everybody sees that. Now you can create your own styles and save them. You can import more styles into your computer, and you can also change the styles. So that was the default a while ago. Now we're looking at photographic effects. I can change the library as well. Let's go text effects. Okay, right. So, and if you hover over each one of these style options, you will actually see a name for it. So this first one here, which I find is really attractive, I'm going to work with in a minute. It's called blue gradient with stroke, right? And you can go through and select different options. So it's an easy way to add a quick effect to your objects in your document. It's also an easy way to create uniformity. In other words, I could apply that same effect to not just the text layer, right? But I could also apply it easily to the shape layer as well in the background. All right. Everybody sees that? So let's look at the styles in a little bit more detail and how we create them. Okay. To start with, second. Let's go with a simple one. All right. We're going to look at this style and we're going to observe it, the layer in the layers palette. So this layer has a stroke. If you notice, once we click on the style and you look at it in the layers palette, you have a sub, not sure what to describe it as, sort of like it shows the attributes of the layer, right, on the effects. So you have the effects, and the effects that are added are stroke, and you can make the effects visible or invisible by clicking on the little eye next to it, right, and a gradient overlay. Okay, now how do you create your styles? I'll go for that. I'm going to clear layer style here. So we have just our blank text layer, right? And we're going to attempt to create a style using that layer to complement the one at the bottom, right? To do that, you can do it one of two ways. You can either double click. Now it's a very specific location, right? So you can double click on this area of your layers palette, which is just after the name of the layer in that little blank space right there. You double click, it will pull up your blending options, your layer style dialog box. Everybody got that? Yes?
Yes.
All right, cool. The other way to pull up those options are, if you right click on the layer and you click on blending options, right? It brings up your layer style dialog box. Now, it comes up directly over above your document, and you may have issues seeing your document with it. So usually what I recommend is you can shift it to the side. At times like that, it's really handy to have a second monitor. So you can just move that out of the way to a second screen so you can see the effects as you're applying them. All right. Let's just go through the options that we have here. And let me show you, I'll show you. Let me just move that a little bit to the side. Trying to keep it neat on one screen and to enable all of us to see. All right, so I'm going to double click on my layer. All right. Now, on the left side of the screen, right, in the layer style dialog box, you have all of the options that you can add, the options for attributes that you can add to your layer. All right. And on the right side, you have the properties that you can set for these options. So, bevel and emboss. To apply that option, we would click on the little checkbox next to it to activate it. And then we click on the words bevel and emboss to bring up the properties for the bevel and emboss. We have different styles of bevel. We can have an inner bevel. Bevel and emboss, by the way, is the effect that tends to give your flat objects a 3D look. All right, so it gives them a bevel or embosses them. Well, I'm not sure if you know the definition of those terms, but that is basically what it is. It turns it into 3D-ish, okay? So you have different options for that: inner bevel, outer bevel, right? Emboss, pillow emboss, stroke emboss. So basically the idea is you would select an option, right? And then you would customize its properties to get at exactly what you wanted your object to look like, okay? So that's bevel and emboss. The second one is stroke. Can anybody tell me what is stroke? Look at it, I just applied it. I'm gonna tweak it. We can change the size of the stroke. We can change its position, whether it's on the outside of the layer all right? Whether it's on the inside of the layer or whether it's in the center. Based on that, can somebody tell me what the stroke is? Let's go outside. Let me add the stroke outside. Make it red so we can see it across the stream. Can somebody tell me what the stroke is? None? All right, so a stroke is basically a line on the outer perimeter of your object. So in this case, you see the word layer styles. If we add a stroke, a red stroke, for instance, what it gives us is a red line around the edges or around the perimeter of that text, okay? In the layer below, what we have is essentially a yellow stroke. So you would click on the object to make it active, click on the word stroke to change the options. And for instance, we can change the color to, let's make it that same yellow we have down here. The yellow and the white doesn't really work. So we're gonna move on to changing the color. Let's take out the stroke for now. Next option we have is inner shadow, all right? And inner shadow is pretty much straightforward. It gives you a shadow on the inner part of the object, all right? And with the black background, you're not really seeing that too clearly, but anyway, we'll come back to that. Then we have inner glow. The difference between a shadow and a glow is trivial. A shadow typically is cast by light hitting an object, creates a shadow, right? And a glow is caused by an object illuminating. So it gives you two different effects. Let's just look at the effect of the inner glow. Let's make it a red glow. So again, we can see it. Right, so a glow, the inner glow is similar to the stroke, but a stroke is actually, the difference is in the detail, right? So a stroke is a fixed solid line. A glow sort of, well, fades out, if you understand what I mean. Everybody get that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
We also have the option for outer glow, which is the same thing, but on the outer part of the image, all right? We have satin. Now, everybody knows what satin is, satin cloth. Anyone have seen satin cloth?
Yeah.
Before? Yeah. Okay. So the satin effect sort of gives you the I can never really explain it, but it simulates the effect of wrapping your object, whatever it is, in a piece of satin cloth, right? So the way the light would interact with the cloth and give you those different reflections is basically what it would simulate. And of course, you can play with the options to give you different effects with it. It should be normal. All right, but that is one that you're gonna have to play around with because describing it is not my forte. All right, but it does give some really, really interesting effects. All right. The next option is color overlay. Can somebody tell me what the color overlay does?
Put another color over it.
Right, it gives it a color overlay. So it fills the entire object with a solid color. Of course, if that was a picture of my face, for instance, and we give it a color overlay, it will look like just the same thing. The outline of my face with a solid red in that case, all right? Not much options to change here except the color and the blend mode, which we'll go through in a while. The blend mode is really how the color interacts with the other colors around it, below it, above it, and so on, all right? And for the most part, how we use that is whenever you want to blend the color, you go through the options and see what works well with the colors, the pixels that you have on your document. All right, so you play around with that on your own time. There are lots of options. It would take us days to go through everything that is capable of. All right. Apart from color overlay, we can give it a gradient overlay. Can somebody tell me what's a gradient?
Almost like a fading color. It starts out dark and then all colors mix.
Right. So it's a gradient is how one color moves or transitions into another color. So here we have a simple green into red gradient. Of course, we use gradients to, like you rightly said, demonstrate light into dark areas. So if you want to give the illusion of, for instance, shadows or light not being cast somewhere, then you would just use white and black. But gradients can actually use any colors. So it's really how one color changes, it transitions into another. So just like color overlay, it fills the entire object with the gradient, meaning you don't really see any detail below it unless if you change your blend mode. And again, I'm gonna leave that for you to play with, right? But let's just look at your gradients and how you would change your gradients, because you can manipulate it in different ways, right? So if we apply the gradient or make the gradient active by clicking on the little checkbox, and we click on the text so we can view the properties, our main option we're interested here is gradient. We double click on the little color preview, or single click rather. It takes you to the gradient editor. Now, the gradient editor has some presets here. Again, you do have additional presets on your that built into Photoshop. You could download new ones. You could create new ones of your own. All right. But at its simplest level, you're working with this square down here, and there's 4 controls. The 2 at the top will control transparency, meaning how much you can see through the color. And those at the bottom will determine color. So if I wanted to modify that gradient, so instead of from green to red, I wanted to make it transition from green to blue. On the red side, I will simply click on this red control, change it to blue. Okay. And my gradient would be changed from green to blue. All right. We can also adjust how far our colors run into the gradient by moving the sliders and the controls around. Again, that is something that really and truly you should really just play with to understand. It's better if you do it that way than if you sit down and listen to me try to explain to you what all of this does. All right.
Yes.
Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. The next option we have is pattern overlay. And I think at least one of you guys mentioned that you were into 3D modeling. Yes, no? Or am I wrong? Is that a different class? But anyway.
What's the question?
No, I said, I believe that one of you guys told me that you were into 3D modeling.
Yeah, but architecture-wise.
Oh, architecture-wise. Okay, okay. Well, still, even with architecture, let's suppose you you do a rendering of a building. You would use different textures to simulate walls, for instance, to simulate wooden floors, for instance, right? To simulate different finishes on your walls. So that sort of thing, right? But a texture is, I'm not sure. Can any of you use words to explain what a texture is? A texture is like the visual finish of an object, all right? So you would use the pattern overlay to apply a pattern, right? Which can simulate texture onto an object. It really just puts a pattern and then you can modify the pattern in different ways. Again, you can create your own patterns. There are a number of patterns built into Photoshop, such as, for instance, rock patterns or nature patterns or color paper. Let's look at rock patterns. A little smaller scale. Yeah, so that is like rocks, seaside rocks. Yeah, you never know when that would come in handy, but that is what the pattern overlay does. Outer glow, again, similarly to the outer glow, to the inner glow, the outer glow creates a glow on the outside of your object. Let me just make it really defined so you can see what it looks like. We have the opacity, right? So this is a red outer glow. Contrast that with a red stroke. So let me remove the glow. So you see the stroke is a really hard defined line. It starts somewhere and it stops somewhere. The glow, on the other hand, sort of fades into nothingness. It's like the way a light disappears, right? Or fades out into the darkness. All right. And the last option here is a drop shadow. Now, for drop shadow, I'm going to remove the black because shadows typically work best in black, although you can use shadows in any color, right? But just to illustrate what the shadow is properly, I'm going to change the color of the text. Change it to red so we can see the shadow. Now, everybody knows what a shadow is, right?
Yes.
Okay. A drop shadow is called a drop shadow because that is exactly what it does. It simulates a shadow that drops below the object on your document. So if I select drop shadow, let's give it some distance. I want our color to be normal. Just give my computer a minute for it to figure out what it's doing. Come on. Oh, sorry, I missed it. My opacity was all the way down to 0 and I was waiting for it to show up. So sorry about that, guys. Let me bring the size down. All right. So a shadow, a drop shadow basically is a knockout of the object that basically just drops below the object itself. Yeah, everybody sees that? Now you can modify it in different ways. This is a really hard and sharp shadow, right? You can also get a more fuzzy shadow, which is more likely what a shadow would look like. Again, shadows change depending on the intensity of the light, how close the object is to the light, the angle of the light, and so on. All right. So all of these you can, well, most of these you can modify from the settings here, from the drop shadow settings. Everybody sees that?
Yeah.
Now, where a drop shadow would not be ideal is if you're simulating a 3D object. All right. And the one like you saw the card that you used on the business card. It had the shadow at the bottom. A shadow like that was actually a more complex shadow. So if you wanted to recreate that shadow, a drop shadow would not be sufficient. All right.
Okay.
You'd have to manually work it out yourself.
Okay.
But for simple things, a drop shadow is more than sufficient. For separating text from background layers, for instance, on that other business card. 1 second. Okay. Let's pull up Naomi's card. All right. So Naomi, just as an example of what you could do with the layer style, right? You can build your styles to look like anything you want, but you have the effect here. And are those custom shapes? You drew those shapes yourself? The red and the blue. Sorry, the blue and the yellow with the pen tool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to remove the yellow. I'm actually going to try to recreate it using the drop shadow, if I can. All right. So before I take it out, I'm going to leave it and just apply the drop shadow, see if I can fit it right on it. just as a demonstration, but I'm gonna use red first. All right, I'm gonna make it already hard red. Sharp. Okay. All right, so we want a little distance. The distance is pretty much how far the shadow is cast. All right, your light has something to do with that. And we want to change the angle in this case. It looks like your light source is coming from this way. Okay. Not exactly the same thing, but similar enough, right? That is the effect of a drop shadow. And we could have made it yellow. I just didn't want to interfere with your design too much. I'm gonna take it out, right? That would be the effect of a drop shadow. So that yellow there sort of simulates the drop shadow. Where it falls off is because your object is right at the edge of your design. So to fix that, all I would do is make your object a little bit bigger to go beyond the edges of where it needs to be, so that the areas where the shadow fall apart, you don't really see it. Yeah. So instead of creating, let's see this. Yeah. So instead of creating 2 layers, you could have actually just created 1 layer and a drop shadow. See that?
Yes, cool.
All right. I would have liked to use this card. 1 second. This one. So again, remember we mentioned the text here that was a little bit hard to make out. A black drop shadow. And I'm going to illustrate what it would look like on this one, on the blue text here, right? A small black drop shadow would be adequate enough to make it stand out. So, 1 second. All right, so drop shadow. It is. Like a minute. And obviously, this isn't what we want, right? So we're going to just move it so you guys can see. All right, so we're going to modify the drop shadow. First thing is the distance, right? And then the angle, maybe we want you to drop a little more on the bottom. And then the color, and make it black. So let's look at the difference. It's just one effect, a drop shadow. But your text moved from this to a little bit more defined. Maybe you might see it better. Yeah.
Yes,
So
okay.
for the example of hair, it would have worked out much better. You would have seen the number actually pop out. That or a dark glow, anything would have worked in that case. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's get back to the styles. And let us actually break down this style now. Now that we know how to apply layer style to an object or to a layer, let's break down one of our styles. This one was this very first one, which is blue gradient with stroke, right? It's a simple style. Let's look at what we would do if we wanted to recreate it, all right? So to do that, we go to our layers panel and we look at our layer that currently has the effects of the layer style that we want, all right? Stroke. We can double click on the stroke setting. Sorry, the stroke option to see the settings. All right. So currently this has a stroke of 25 on the outside. All right. The stroke is actually a gradient. You guys didn't realize that, right? So you can apply not only a flat stroke, but strokes in the form of a gradient. So a flat yellow stroke. Sorry. A flat yellow stroke would look something like this. The color may not have been the same, right? But if you look at the gradient stroke, it has black on one edge, which gives you the black on the extreme inside, separating the blue from the yellow, and black on the other edge, which gives you the black on the outside, separating the yellow from the white in that case. Yeah.
Yes.
And it has a gradient overlay. So a gradient stroke and a gradient overlay, and we can look at what the gradient is. It's really just four colors, four blues actually, moving from darkest to lightest. So it's not a very difficult style, is it? But yet still it's very attractive.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions on any of that?
None from.
Okay. I have some homework for you. You guys ready for it?
Yeah.
All right. So we looked at layer styles today, how you apply effects, basically, or layer styles to an object in your document. What I want you to do is, well, you're home already, but play with the options, right? Use text layers, shape layers, and image layers. Compare the 3 different types of objects, right? And I want you to create 3 different layer styles. I want you to create a suitable layer style for your text, right? I want you to create a suitable layer style for your shapes. And I want you to create a suitable layer style for another object, something with detail, like a picture of your face or an image of a car or a picture of a rose, right? Something where if you give it a color overlay without any other settings, it's going to obviously ruin the image. All right, that's what I mean, basically. So everybody understand what they're to do?
Can you repeat, please, sir?
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again while I repeat. So, all right. So we know what layer styles are, and we understand how to use them, how to apply them, and also how to create them. Am I right? Does everybody have that understanding from what we've done today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
For homework, I want you to go and create your very own style. Not any of the styles that are built into Photoshop. I remember Photoshop has quite a bit. You can use it to give you ideas. From the layer styles, you click on the little menu option and you can select, for instance, glass button. So let me demonstrate what I want you to do for homework. I want, let's just remove that. Make it so that we can see. Okay, I want one text layer, right? I want one shape layer. And then I want another object, an object with pixels, right? So a text layer, a shape layer, and a regular bitmap layer. And what I want you to do is I want you to create your own style, your very own style. I want you to create a style that is suitable for your text layer, I'm going to switch my, so this text effect was gotten from the group text effect, sorry, from the library text effects. I'm going to select glass buttons now. And glass buttons will illustrate what I'm looking for your shape layer. So I want you to create a style that will be suitable for your shape layer, right? And then I want you to create a style. Let me again change my library into photographic effects, for instance. Let's see what options we have here, right? Okay, and this is photographic effects. This would be a style for your regular layers. That one changes it to black and white. Everybody understand what you have to do. Now, let me just explain what I'm looking for. If I notice I'm adding effects to this image and it's changing the images, looks like I'm adding different filters in one of those filter apps, right? Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, but if I want to change the library and select, say, text effects, right? And I were to use that same effect that I use in the layer styles. The layer styles look good, right? It does, right?
Yeah.
But if I apply that same style to that bitmap image, this is what I come up with. You see what I mean?
Okay.
Everybody understand that, right? So obviously you lose, you might as well have started with a circle rather than an image if you were going to use this effect. But a photographic effect basically would use the same elements that we were using, such as the drop shadow, the color overlay, and so on. But the effects you would get would complement your object. In other words, you'd still be able to see the image, but it would add something to the image that the image didn't have before with the effect, right? So I want you to create three styles, three layer styles. One that is suitable for text, one that is suitable for your regular shapes, and one that is suitable for an object, a picture of yourself, a picture of a car, a picture of something else. Does everybody get that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Just to demonstrate again, currently, the effect on the picture is negative, right? If I were to use that same effect on the text layer styles, now this is the original thing. The very same effect I have on the picture below, if I apply it to that text, it looks like this. You can't really see the difference. It's the same as if you had given it a color overlay with that color. You understand?
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I mean creating the text for the object. I know it might be a little bit difficult for you guys to understand now, but really and truly the core of the homework is to get you to work with the layer styles, figure out what the different blending options do, right? Figure out what difficulties you have with it, and then you can come to me if you have any issues, okay? So really the homework is to work with this dialog box, right? Your layer style dialog box, and you should essentially know, hopefully by the next class, what each of these settings, not this one, let me put it up on another layer that isn't already compromised. Sorry. All right. All right. So essentially, by the next class, you guys should be familiar with each of these options here, as well as the options that show up on the right when they pop up. You should have gone through at least most of them and have a pretty good idea of what they do and what you can use them for. That is basically the homework. Everybody got it?
Yes.
Yes,
All right.
sir.
So everybody go do that.
Yes.
Any questions before we wrap up?
No, sir.
No.
All right. Well, if you guys have no questions, that's it for today. I will send you the link for that class as soon as I have it and the next class. All right, so you guys will get that soon. I have not a chance to upload the other one. But But as usual, if you guys have any difficulty with anything, feel free to send me a message, get in touch.
Okay.
All right. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Same time.
Nice.
All right.
Bye.
Enjoy your weekend. Stay
Okay,
safe.
goodbye.
You as well.
All right.